Okay, looks like we're okay. So right now there's just a blank screen, but everybody out there, can you hear us? Just indicate in the chat if you can. You don't see our faces just yet, but we can. I'll just set this up. So. Okay, so I'm okay. You got sound. Okay, good, and that means we are actually live. So
very good,
very good. So I'm gonna just bring this up and welcome everybody to our live stream. It'll take a little bit in terms of as people kind of trickle in, and so we're just kind of checking as to who's kind of checking in at the moment. We've got our chat box open, and great. Okay, so if everybody can hear us, so hopefully we've got this working. There's YouTube keeps upgrading stuff, and how OBS and YouTube work together has changed a little bit since when I started doing this, and so I've been trying to figure this out. Okay, so good. We can see people. Welcome. Hi Marcel. Welcome to Bill, to Will, Dave BNS N-Scale, Doug Birch, Peter. Good. The welcome, and this is probably going to end up being at least a weekly feature for a little while. But part of the group weathering project has to do with, honestly, this is probably the most open-ended kind of group project that we can imagine. Is like, honestly, grab something out of your stash and weather it. And one of the things that I wanted to do as part of this is to be able to say, okay, you're working on something, you've pulled something out of your stash, but why don't we have a conversation about that? And so the idea is that last week we were fortunate enough to have Ralph Lorenzetti on the broadcast, and we talked about different techniques and the like. But moving forward, I want to have conversations with you. And this week is the first chance that we get, and I wanted to introduce to you my special guest. This is Robin Felder. He is Rob Fell on YouTube. If you are in my in the group that I've created for JC's Rip Track, and as a matter of fact, if I've got the link correct here, there's the link to the Facebook group, and Robin just recently posted up a whole bunch of stuff in terms of what he's currently working on, and it's sort of pulling out of the stash. So anyway, Robin, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Sounds great. So hi everybody, I'm Robin Felder. Thank you for having me at the show tonight. Or at least it's tonight in Europe. I guess you have a pretty different time zone where you guys joined in. So welcome anyway, and thanks for the opportunity. So where do we want to start?
Well, I mean, in part is one of the reasons why I've asked Robin to be on the show is that fairly early on when I started JC's Rip Track, Robin kind of was one of my early followers, and really what I consider to be a conversation partner in terms of weathering techniques and ideas. Despite the fact that you see the U.S. Flag in the background, is Robin, as he already mentioned, is from Switzerland. He is in Luzern. And the reason the U.S. flag is behind him is to make sure that you can actually see his face, because the white wall behind him just backlights him very badly, and it just blows out the picture. Plus, he also happens to model North American. But here's a little bit of trivia, is that Robin actually works for a railroad in Switzerland. Now, which company do you work for, Robin?
Actually, it's called Zentralbahn, which in English would mean Central Railway,
okay.
And it is a part of the National Railway. It's like 60% We are part of the main national railway we have over here, and it's a narrow gauge railroad actually.
Okay.
It's a pretty small network of like 80 miles, I would say. And that's where I started as a maintenance of way, as a track builder, I would say. And then later I joined as an engineer, as you call it.
Yep.
And that's what I'm currently doing right now. So
cool.
Yeah.
And you were on an 11-hour shift trying to do the math. It's currently 9 o'clock where you are. It's 1 o'clock where I am, or roughly. And so prior to that, I talked to him around midnight his time yesterday, and he had just come off an 11-hour shift. Is that correct?
Yeah, actually, that was when I came back from work, because I now have a week off.
Okay.
I have holiday now.
Okay.
And yesterday I had to work one more shift. That was a late shift. So yeah, that's why I came back. Right. It was midnight over here. Yes, exactly.
Yeah, and of course, being part of the rail networks, you're part of the essential services. So you're not
Exactly. Yes.
you're not necessarily in kind of lockdown or enforced in the social distancing. But I assume you're staying at home and you're working on stuff. And so
Exactly right.
What you got for us?
Okay, so right now I am working on this Union Pacific. It's a C45 ACCTE. Let's focus it in the camera for a moment. So it's basically it's a GEVO locomotive.
Nice.
And I did a lot of fading today and yesterday as well. And now I let it dry because it was all oil paints. And actually right now I'm waiting for some additional pan pastels. But they didn't arrive right now, so hopefully they will come next week.
Okay.
And another project, of course, is the well-known gondola project.
Yes, and of course you got.
I hope you can see it in the camera, the background. And these are two gondolas. I will do a C&D, a construction and demolition service for these two gondolas, alongside the ex-wood chip hoppers I already showed. That was a while back. These are all finished now. I have 4 of these.
Okay.
Hopefully, the Exactrail will release another run of these cars, because I absolutely love this kind of cars. And then we have a 50-foot or 60-foot TTX boxcar I'm working right now.
Nice.
So the grime work here is all done with oil paints, actually.
Okay.
And I have something special, but these are for a friend of mine. I have this. I hope the camera gets it. It's a
holy cow
G scale.
Yeah.
Railway.
Now that's a project. That's a project and a half.
Yes,
so,
I absolutely have no idea what I'm gonna do with those. I have 3 of those to make for a friend of mine.
Okay.
A long-term customer, actually. And I have absolutely no idea where I will begin with those.
Okay. Well, I mean, just out of curiosity, working with something that large, particularly, I mean, that's just like a lot of the G scale stuff we have here are usually, I mean, yes, you can get the full size stuff, but a lot of the stuff that I've seen is sort of early steam era, and usually fairly short cars, despite being G scale. I mean, I know there's some others that like do the full size ones, but I mean, the one thing when you're working in that kind of scale is just like looking at techniques that scale up, but at the same time, the kind of detail that you can get on that, as opposed to me working on something like this, it's certainly quite a bit difference. I mean, your scale is HO, right? Yes, exactly. Okay.
I model the modern era East Coast, so I have like my rolling stock is 70% Norfolk Southern, 20% CSX, and then I have some CN, of course, and some UP stuff as well. But my main focus is on Norfolk Southern. It's my all-time favorite.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I don't have a layout room right now because our apartment is pretty small. But eventually, I'm gonna start with some modular, some segments, some modular buildings. Maybe this year, hopefully. Yep. And in the meantime, that's basically why I started weathering.
Yes,
because that is what I can do at home.
Well, exactly. Now. It's what you have the real estate to do, and so like in part, I mean, if you don't have a lot of real estate, well, you can still do something and kind of attach to that. So you've mentioned a couple of techniques kind of along the way. Do you have any particular favorites that you've kind of come across that you want to share with people?
Actually, your oil dot fading is the one I really stuck onto it, because when I originally started, I did it with some enamel paints, just some white and some thinner, and then I just sprayed the whole model. But I really think the possibility we have with oil paints is that you really can go into crannies and more like in some specific areas rather than just spray the whole car.
Right.
And that comes pretty handy. I'm gonna show it right here. So, like when you have one specific area where you need more of the fading or some concrete dust or something, then it's way easier to work with oil paints and with a brush rather than with an airbrush when you just spray the whole model. So, actually, I don't fade models anymore with airbrush.
Yeah. Well,
I do it with over.
Here's a little bit of an irony. This one, which I just finished. I did the oil dot fade this week. I haven't had a chance to. So Florent, if you're watching, the next stage for this one goes really pale. And I did the initial fade, which you can kind of see here. It's got to go lighter than that, like really sun bleached. So I am going to use an airbrush on that, but only after now that I've done the oil dot fade to kind of give that kind of model look. There's occasions where using an airbrush is there, but I mean, as you found out, I mean, you can literally weather something start to finish without using an airbrush at all. I mean, you don't,
absolutely.
You don't need one, but so you're finding that the oil dot fade works. Now, the one thing is I don't own the oil dot fade. That's actually something that I lifted from military modelers, and so sometimes they refer to it as an oil dot filter or things like that, and you can do it a lot better. So you like the oil dot fade. Any other tricks or techniques that you've kind of picked up along the way?
Well, actually, all of my techniques are learned and somehow a little bit changed or modified from other people. I originally, actually I have the book here, so this is when it all started for me. This is the weathering book by Pelle Søborg from Denmark, and he's quite known by other people as well. And this book was released in 2013, and actually that's when I started with this whole weathering topic.
Okay.
And then originally I took his techniques one by one and just copied them. That's how I get into the whole thing.
Oh yeah.
And I made this amateur skill thoughts, like I mixed enamel paints with acrylic thinner because I didn't notice the different label, and I had to throw away the whole airbrush. I was absolutely not able to clean it off.
Like you lost an airbrush out of that?
Yes, I did. It was a horrible mistake. Never happened again, but well, things happen. So.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you do learn. You kind of learn the hard way, partway going through it. I mean,
yes.
I learned the hard way with Vallejo model color is you don't thin it with alcohol, and that's not something that you necessarily want to. And then ironically, on the other end, the AK real colors, don't mix them with water, because. And ironically, what happens if you do that with each, like if you mix Vallejo model color with alcohol, or you mix the AK real colors and even the Tamiya colors with water, they'll separate, and that's that kind of gooey mess that we kind of run into. And so I mean that's part of the things that you learn along the way. So
exactly, it's all try and error, and there were a lot of errors on the way. So, but step by step, I started to use different techniques. The only thing I still use, which I learned from Pelle Søborg, is this Model Master enamel paint. So this is number 2002. This is a skin tone dark tint.
Oh, okay.
It's a dark, grimy color, and this still is my favorite for wheel faces and wheel treads.
Oh, okay. So listen to that one, and actually, so actually here I'm going to type this in. So it's Model Master.
It's enamel paint. It's number 2002.
2002, and it's called
skin tone dark tint. And this really still is my absolute #1 favorite when it comes to, but only the wheels. So really just the wheels, inside and outside, both ways.
Okay.
And then I come back with powders, and I add some powders. It doesn't matter whatever you prefer. You can use Pan Pastels, Monroe models, which was AIM powders before that.
Yeah.
Or whatever you want. It doesn't really matter. But this is the base layer for wheels, and still my favorite. And the good thing about this is it's pretty easy to clean off the wheels after that, because whenever I finish a project, I always clean the wheels.
Yes, if there's ever one of the bits of advice for any of the commission projects that I've done. Sorry, you can hear my son at the top of the stairs, and
yeah, that's fine.
He has no soft volume. He's either on or off, and if he's excited about something. So, my apologies for the shouts in the background. But as people have known with the live streams here, is that they do tend to tend to be a little random. No trombones today, I'm afraid. With schools being canceled, everything is being done online, and currently there's no band happening right now. So anyway, so we don't have a trombone in the house right now. Sad trombones. Anyway, so going back to that, one of the bits of advice that I, for any commission that I've done, is it's really important that people clean the wheels after weathering. And I think that's a really good piece of advice. If you're weathering your own stuff, just to be sure, even if you've had the shell off and everything else, make sure to clean the wheels, because we're trying to weather all this stuff, and inevitably some of those little bits can get on electrical contacts and things like that. You just want to make sure that that's kind of cleaned off, that it's functioning well. And I mean, some of you watching who are much better at the electrical stuff than I am, trust me, much. I mean, I did take electronics in high school. I know the basics on how it works, but really I do rely on the broader community for doing the electrical stuff. So I can make it look dirty, but anyway. So now there was a technique that you and I kind of chatting back and forth about it was using kind of an airbrush, especially you were concerned particularly was on a brass model of how to do grills.
Yes.
So I'm curious about this, because it's not a technique that I've tried. But take a look at this. Look at this. You know, and I mean that is actually it's transparent all the way through.
Yes,
okay.
And that's the main reason, or the main problem I was facing, because nowadays, especially with these newer scale trains models, by the way, they are absolutely beautiful, so they are great models, but the see-through parts of the grills, they look awesome, but they are a bit of a problem, because I was afraid that I could damage especially with the brass model I just showed, I could damage the motors and the wheels behind the grills.
Right, because of course if you're spraying through the grills,
exactly.
and the whole mechanism is still attached. So what'd you come up with?
Actually, this is Model Master acrylic paint, just a black paint actually. So one possibility would be to take the shell apart and do some masking tape inside the grill. Okay. So whatever paint comes through the grill won't go to the wheels or to the motors. So that could work pretty well. I did not do that. I just sprayed through the model and test run it, and everything works fine. So I hope the same is with the other models when I do this in the future.
Yeah, and I mean part of that is just trying to be careful. It's making sure if you're spraying through, what are you going to be hitting? I mean, I think the masking tape's a good idea, but for example, as I've learned with these Broadway models, they're virtually impossible to take apart without actually taking the mechanism apart, and that's not something that I'm just being careful masking. Fortunately, there's nothing on these that would directly affect a motor like that type of grill work. But still, at the same time, it's like, you know, trying to make sure is it working each time, and testing it along the way. So,
That was actually the problem because so this brass model I just showed.
mhm,
This was customized by Bradley DCC. So
okay,
this is Arthur Bradley from in Indianapolis, I
okay,
guess. He's a great guy when it comes to DCC custom weathering and detailing, and he does all LED and sound. And
mhm,
I have absolutely no idea about LED and putting sound inside the locomotive, especially with this more expensive brass locomotives.
yeah,
But I wasn't able to pull the shell apart because all the wiring was, of course, inside.
okay,
So I just couldn't do it separately. I had to do it as a whole thing, and it worked fine. So I'm
okay,
pretty happy with it.
okay.
Yeah.
Oh, good. So, I mean, I'm certainly glad. So there is. So, can you describe in terms of like use the model master now? Now, did you have to do any sort of cleanup around it, or
Yes, I did.
yeah?
I did.
Okay.
I came back with lots and lots and lots of Q-tips and alcohol.
Okay.
I guess you could use the model mouth thinner as well. I used alcohol. It was 70% IPA.
Okay.
It worked pretty fine. I cleaned off all around the locomotive.
Mhm.
You could also use, I guess, a quick age,
Okay.
which is also alcohol based with
Mhm.
some what is it? Not sure what's inside. It's alcohol with something.
Okay.
You can put it off and then clean it off again.
Okay, yeah, because there are some techniques out there, and curiously enough, there was a conversation that we had for there's a product that only seems to be available in England, or if it's available either in Canada or the U.S., like you have to almost special order it, and that's I've seen two different places. The one that I'm actually remembering is called Flory Models, um, and it's a clay type. Sort of a clay type wash, but you airbrush it on, and then I think it's use alcohol to clean it off. It's something that seems to have a certain following. And it's something here's this would be interesting to try, but these kind of application and removal type things. I mean, even a panel line wash is an application and removal
Exactly.
process, because you have to put it on and then you got to take off the excess. um, so curiously enough, some of the techniques that I've been using, Robin has kind of pushed me into trying out. And he's have you seen this, or have you seen this? And so learning some of the new products. So I need to thank you for that. And I'm being able to share that on the
Not
channel.
well.
Well, but I think in pardon me. I took my temperature this morning. I'm fine.
All right. That's important.
Well, it's just trying to make sure that we're all keeping safe. But yeah, it's a ritual. I stick a thermometer in my ear just to make sure. So anyway, so I think in part is so there's the techniques that you had that you originally learned when you started doing this with Palais Sober. And then there's more of the some of the newer techniques and products there. But one other thing that maybe we can kind of talk about is, pardon me, just nose itch. So one of the things that perhaps we want to talk about, maybe have chat start bringing up some questions that you may have for us, is at least one of the people who followed, asked, okay, I really want to get into weathering, but with the social distancing, I don't have access to any of the stuff. So part of this is doing, what do we have around the house? What are some basic things that we can use? And then on the flip side, as we found out interesting enough, last week, both AK Interactive and Ammo by MiG indicated that they would be closing because of the lockdown provisions happening in Spain. However, we found out the next day after last week's broadcast that in fact both companies, both Ammo by MiG and AK Interactive, are able to do mail orders. So in fact, I actually have something on the way. I really like the oil brushes from Ammo by Mig, and so I've been looking for the rust color set for a while, and I just ordered it straight from Spain. But I thought, you know what, if I'm going to order that, since shipping is going to be €7.62. Anyway, I then added in their whole set of what's called streaking brushes, which is going to be totally new for me. It's a product that really hasn't gotten a lot, so that's something that's on the way. But on the other hand, about working kind of with what you have around the house, and sort of, is there any sort of particular home brews that you like to work with? And that's for both Chat and for Robin.
That's a difficult question. Actually, I think one of the most versatile products I have ever seen is the cheap ones. This is Americana by DecoArt.
Okay.
It's Americana, so I think all of you guys in North America can buy it because I imported it from there. Mm-hmm. This is basically just cheap acrylic paint, and it works for everything. So I really have to give proper credit to Mr. Daniel Arnold.
Okay.
So it's Dan's Custom Trains. He's a fellow weatherer, and he uses like 99% these cheap acrylic paints for all his projects. He started to use some water-based oil paints as well, but still 99% of his projects are done with these cheap acrylic paints.
Interesting.
And he works it for everything. So, and he does some really fantastic work with it.
Okay, so you've kind of got me curious about that, because I mean, yes, like there are certain like the cheap acrylic paints, of course, that they don't have really strong pigment on it. So is it a case of it's actually using the feature that it is cheap to achieve a weathering effect? Okay, so
exactly. So you actually use the positive behavior of these paints is the small amount of pigments, which comes pretty handy with this kind of color. So for example, I posted some picture. Mr. Brian Seidinger just contacted me like I would say 35 minutes ago and asked me for the trucks, what I do with all my trucks. And I'm not really a fan of this rattle can spray stuff because, one, it smells horrible. Two, it's a horrible impact for the environment because it's an aerosol driven.
Yep.
So I have an airbrush. There comes air. Why would I use a rattle can? So I don't use the technique the guys from the Rust Bucket forum use with this gray auto primer. What I do is just basically this Americana. This is I think it's burnt umber, traditional burnt umber.
Okay.
And then I take this medium dry Citadel brush.
Okay.
And I do kind of a dry brush, but a little bit more paint. So it's not 99% clean. I would say it's like 70% clean, the brush itself.
Yep.
And then I do a layer on the trucks. I let it dry for 2 minutes, do another layer until I'm satisfied. So the trucks still, they stay black, but you can see a grimy tone on it. And that goes for all my rolling stock. So this is my standard fallback technique I do for all trucks. This is the same technique. I always do the Model Master paint for the wheels, and I always use this burnt umber. Sometimes you can mix it up. So you can add a little bit of gray or a little bit of black to have a variety between each car. And then, like, for example, when you have a more modern car with this blue bearings, this one doesn't have, but you have sometimes you have these blue bearing caps.
Oh, yes.
I clean them off, but not completely. So they're not shiny, but you can see they're blue. So I still leave a layer of grime on it. I come back with powders, and actually that's it. So cheap acrylic paint, a little bit of water, and some powders.
And so, you know, like that's showing an example where you can basically adapt to the quality of the paint. So like
exactly,
you know, so the idea is that you adjust your techniques to the quality of what you're working with. I mean, for example, I mean the Abteilung 502 oils are probably the highest quality weathering oils out there. And you know, as Ralph Renzetti said last week, he basically stopped using other oil paints in favor of those. But on the other hand, on the flip side, that the steam locomotive that I did was actually using a cheap gouache. and it was using the properties of the cheap gouache to get the effect. So some of it comes out of experience or just kind of honestly, fiddling around with it, and not being afraid to experiment on. Like just a quick show of hands, how many of you folks out there have just like stuff you picked up from bargain bins, and like how big is that? How big is that bargain bin? Because I mean that's really if you're going to be really trying to go into weathering, that's where you want to go is do it on a model that doesn't matter, and ironically you might actually get a model that you want to actually have in because you're so happy with how it turned out, is that you want it more or less out in front. So let me know the size of your stash, and in terms of things that you can work with out there. So I'm just sort of wanting to talk now. Robin, is like. So you've got the gondolas you're working on. You might have noticed, of course, in just the title page. That's actually one of your locomotives right here. That with the Southern or the Southern Pacific with the Union Pacific label. That's something that you're working on. What's next on your desk?
Right now I have 7 freight cars right here on my desk, but so I have always the same kind of steps I go through. So, for example, when I did the fading on these gondolas, there were 2 of these gondolas. I prefer to let them dry by themselves. So I don't accelerate the drying time of oil paints. I use the behavior of it and just leave it as it is for 2 or 3 days, if possible for 3 days. In the same time, I picked another car which was ready and I worked on these. So I did with oil paints, I did a rust grime tone, all with oil paints around the bottom edge here. And since this has to dry as well for 3 days, I grabbed another car, which in this case was this railbox car I showed earlier. So this is the roof here. Actually, I did this from prototype pictures. I used some, again, you can use this cheap Americana paint. I used Vallejo paint for this one and just a regular brush. And so these are the total of 4 cars. I switched back and forth, so I can do one step at a car at each time.
Right. So the idea is basically as you're letting one item dry for an extended period of time, then you can work on another. It's sort of the. I often like to work, like for example, when I painted miniatures, you're better to work on 10 at a time. Even if you're working with acrylics, so that by the time you get to the end of the row, you can start back at the beginning. Now, this, because you're working with oils, you need to let it dry longer, so you're doing it, but it's spaced out over a long period of time.
Exactly. I never work on just one car. I always have at least 3 projects I'm currently working on. And that is also because of my working time. So when I have the early shift, usually in the afternoon, I work a lot on these weathering projects. When I have the late shift, usually I need more sleep, so I work less within 1 week.
Right.
So that's why I always need a couple different projects. But one which is upcoming next, I have. So these are sent by a very good friend of mine, Roger Ecker. He's a very good friend over here in Switzerland. He sent me I think 6 of these well cars. And I'm pretty curious. Actually, I was hoping maybe you can give me some advice.
Sure.
I think I'm gonna do an oil dot fading as always, because that is my standard technique in the meantime. And I think since there are tons of ribs here, I think an oil and a wash technique would be best, I think.
Yeah, like to bring out those ribs. Now, I'm going to pause that one for there, because there actually was a question that came.
Yes, Phil Kling asked us something.
Yeah, he said, have either of us ever used chalk paints? I have not. Robin, have you looked at chalk paints at all?
So with chalk paints, is that basically chalk, so the dry powder, or is that something different? Because if you mean the chalks, the dry chalks themselves, I bought 3 different colors. I used them, but they don't stick really good.
Yeah.
So they are just completely dry powder, actually. I don't really like to use them. I prefer, but that's also because I have tons of weathering powders I already bought. So that's why I prefer not to buy even more stuff.
Yeah.
I really like the Monroe powders, but basic chalks didn't work pretty good for me.
Yeah. And now, Will, one of the things, now we may be talking about something a little bit different because, Will, if, for example, I know if you can go to over here, it's like a Michael's or something like that. I think they're still doing curbside pickup here where you can order online and they'll leave it outside for you. But it's actual, it's a kind of paint. Now, Will, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's the kind of paint that you apply to a wall, and then you can actually. It creates basically it's a type of paint that dries kind of a matte that you can actually take a piece of chalk and draw on it. Is that, Will? Is that the kind of thing that you're talking about? Just answer in chat, and then we'll kind of continue and possibly come back to that. So. All right, let's kind of bring this back to the well car. Of course, the well cars are yellow, and I mean, like an oil based wash will work really well on that. Especially, like the more detail there is on something, that's where you want to really try and bring in the oil washes. Of course, well cars like that actually attract a lot of graffiti. I mean, they can't get to the containers, but the well cars often have a lot of graffiti on them. So, I mean, I don't know if that's something that you wanted to consider, but all those ribs. I mean, of course, I'm looking at that and going to my own standard of, Starship Filth would probably work really well
exactly.
on that.
It's one of my favorites as well.
Yeah. So I mean, put it this way: if there's, I know I've said this a dozen times, I'm still going to say it. If you can find it, get Starship Filth. And now the oil color is available from Abteilung 502, which is available on the AK Interactive site. I do actually have it on my. I actually have enough of a following that I've actually got my own Amazon storefront. I mean, it's not very active, but if you can't find it anywhere else, like my suggestion is try and find it at your local hobby shop. But if you can't find it anywhere else, you can order it through there. And I mean, disclaimer: I do get a commission if you order it from there. I do get a small commission on it. But Starship Filth in the tube is really good, and Starship Filth that comes in the Ammo by Make oil brushers is also really good. But curiously enough, color-wise, they are actually slightly different, but they're both very, very good. So they're not exact colors. The Abteilung tube is a little darker than what you get in the oil brusher. But the oil brusher, it's still great. I've used both.
I absolutely agree. I also have both products. And since I have the ready-to-use wash, I prefer to use that one because it's slightly faster, because obviously you already have it mixed. But I also tried one of the things you mentioned with the Abteilung 502 oil paint, and then did my own wash like you did in one of the first video series. And both worked very, very good. It's a pretty versatile color. I absolutely love it. I showed it to others. They also like it, so it really is good. I have seen Dave BNSF mentioned Ralph mixed chalk with hairspray.
Yes. Well, he did a weathering powder doing festered rust last week. And actually, you know what? I'm going to try that technique on this one. I haven't yet, but I'm going to, because that looked really, really, really cool. So I'm actually going to go back and watch my own live stream from last week to make sure I get that technique correct. So yes, Dave, we did talk about it. I don't have the timestamp yet, but the piece on festered rust from last week's live stream, it's there, and it's about using the powders and hairspray. And I think whether he's using rust powders, whether they're actual like ground chalks, or whether they're or whether there's something like Monroe or the big powders. I mean, speaking of which, when it comes to powders, I because of my style, I tend not to use powders all that much. I mean, I did on the steam locomotive. because for me, powders provide texture, and I think that's one of the things that makes festive rust work so well with a powder. But you would suggest in terms of trying stuff out is you tend to prefer the Monroe models, the AIM products over, say, something like MIG or AK Interactive. Is that true?
I do. Yes, I have to mention when it comes to the regular chalks, when you can just scrape it off with an X-Acto and make your own powders.
Right.
They sure work great. I have seen cars done with this technique. It looks absolutely fantastic. I just want to say the ones I bought didn't work.
Okay.
That doesn't mean that chalks as basic won't work. So I'm sure there are like 300 different brands. I'm pretty sure I just picked the wrong one.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm gonna stick with the powders I already bought. My all-time favorite is pan pastels because they stick very, very nice.
Okay.
And they also have just simply the coloring, the blending of it is absolutely perfect for what I use them.
Yeah.
They give texture, that's for sure. It really depends on what you work on, I think. So when it comes to trucks, actually the grime building up is actually kind of a texture in addition to the truck itself, which is made out of steel. So that's why I use a lot of pan pastels when it comes to trucks and lower areas. Sometimes I use it on rooftops of locomotives because what comes closest, in my opinion, to the particles in a diesel exhaust is actually powders.
Right.
Because it's also a powdery kind of grime which comes out of the soot, which comes out of a diesel vent.
Right.
So I use it sometimes on top of locomotives, and I always use it on trucks in addition.
Okay.
So I really like them. The favorites are absolutely the Monroe, which was AIM before, and the pan pastels. These are the two I use. I have some AK Interactive and some MIG powders. They are pretty good, but I think they work better for the military modelers. So they have a flat surface on, let's say, a tank, and they do a specific area with some powders, and then they flood it, whether with thinner or with this decal, with this powder. What is it called?
The fixer.
Yes, the powder fixer. I'm pretty sure it works well when you use it that way, but since I tend not to flood whole areas of locomotive with thinner, they don't stick that good as do the Monroe model powders.
Yeah. I mean, I've used fixtures before, and there's sort of a kind of a double-edged thing. If you use fixtures with a brush, you'll disturb the powders less. But unfortunately, what you'll tend to get is because you're using more of it, you'll get tide marks. And whereas if you use a fixer, like an actual pigment fixer, which I have some, it does work really well. But what I found was when using a pigment fixer, so you apply your pigment, your fixer, your pigments, your powders, and it looks great. And the trouble is, like you've heard this, like people spray it with dull coat, and all of a sudden it all disappears. So you got to do it over again and layer it up. Whereas with a pigment fixer, you don't get that. It's basically one application, and the work that you have is sealed into place. But if you, I find it's much better if you use the fixer with an airbrush, but you got to aim it from way back, because if you do too close, the air coming out of the brush will actually shoot your powders all over the place that you've just applied. So you have to kind of get it so that it's just the mist is landing on the model from way back.
I'm super glad you're mentioning this.
Yeah. And
I just ordered the fixer, and it arrived yesterday, but I wasn't at home, so I have to pick it up on Monday. And I'm glad I didn't try it out, because I'm sure I would have had this inspiring effect.
Because I mean, if in my various videos, what you've noticed that I tend to be almost point blank with my airbrushes, and if I'm doing a fixer, I've got to do from back here, and even back here, like if it's too thick, it can kind of blow it away, and so. One of my little dirty little secrets is I love my little compressor, but I'm actually for various reasons the pressure control valve is stuck. Now it's stuck at an ideal area, but I can't lower it to make that, and I can't raise it up. It is at a fixed pressure, so I've got to do it by distance. So
And we had Otto was asking, have any good tips for clear coats afterwards? I think that's a whole world by itself
Oh
when it comes to
yes,
weathering. This
yeah.
clear coat thing is, I mean, you remember, I asked you like 300 times, John, when I use this, what can I spray on top of that? And what if I use it in a different way? Can I use the matte coat on the satin
Yeah.
and then the other way around? So that's a pretty interesting question
So
there.
Otto, just you've got the future and the flat base. The ratio you're wanting to look is basically if you want a satin look, sort of a not quite semi gloss. Your ratio is 1 part flat base, 10 parts future. If you're looking to do a flat coat, you take that down to 5 parts future, 1 part, and if you want really dead flat, it's a 3-to-1 ratio. The trouble is that you go any lower than that, and you'll get the frosty look that you're talking about. Even at 3-to-1, it's kind of dodgy. But if you're looking for something like the really dead flat finish, it's 3-to-1. But any lower than that, it's going to be frosty.
I would also like to, sorry, I interrupted.
No, go ahead.
I would like to mention here, I once made a model, a G-scale model, and I sprayed some matte coat of, I don't know, maybe it was Vallejo, I'm not sure. And I came with a clear coat by testers on top of it, and it frosted because of the mixture between the enamel spray rattle can and the acrylic.
Yeah.
If that happened to you, Otto, I would say let it dry and come back with another layer of clear coat, and the frosty look should disappear.
Yeah, so
that's what happened to me. I came back with another layer of Testus dull coat, and afterwards it was all fine. But it scared the hell out of me when it was all frosted because it wasn't my unit. It was a customer project.
Yeah. Well, actually, in relation to that, sometimes now this isn't a guarantee all the time, but if you get that frosted look, sometimes if you come back, do kind of a gloss coat over it, and that gloss coat will fill in all those lumpy bits that are creating that frosted look. It kind of cleans your slate, and you can go back and do it. It doesn't work all the time, but if it put it this way, if it can't hurt, so you kind of have to be a little careful on it. But the idea is if you think of it this way. A gloss finish is like very smooth, and that's one of the reasons why oils really work well on it, because it just flows across the surface and it collects around the cracks. Whereas a matte surface is lumpy and bumpy, and when you get the frosted look, what you're getting is that lumpy bumpy surface is really heavy, and it's diffracting the light, and it's actually starting to reflect a lot more white light kind of, and giving that kind of frosted look. So sometimes, and not all the time, but sometimes if you hit it with a gloss coat, that can kind of smooth it back over, and then you can kind of come back and try another flat coat on top of that. But results, your mileage may vary. But Otto, I mean, what you can do is you can through if you're not already on it, just through the Facebook page, you can contact me, and we can talk about that a little bit more as well.
Also, maybe if Otto, if you want to try something else, sometimes I'm not sure at which state or skill level you are. I mean, I'm still in the beginning of all of this, and sometimes it's helpful for me to use products which are made for a specific reason. So let's say if you have a lot of cars you're going to do and a lot of weathering projects upcoming next, I would suggest maybe as an idea that you could buy a specific matte coat and a satin or a gloss coat by a specific brand. So let's say Vallejo or AK Interactive, if you don't want to mix your own stuff. I did import a bottle of Future after John, you recommended in your videos, and you showed the different mixtures. It works perfect. I absolutely do love Future. It's a great product, but I also like to use the AK Interactive matte coat, the Vallejo matte coat, the satin and the gloss coats. You don't have to buy all of them, but I would suggest maybe you buy a matte coat and a gloss coat. Maybe by Vallejo, the small bottle, it's not that expensive, and give it a try with that. Sometimes it can be helpful if you don't have to mix your own stuff together first, and it saves a lot of time.
Yeah, and I to add to that, I would also add to me a flat clear works well. and the Tamiya Flat Clear and the Tamiya Gloss are good. As well, and I mean I sort of use them interchangeably, but of course the future the future works. But the trouble is, as Robin, as you found out, what it's called here in North America, and not only that, they're changing the name of it here as well. And sorry, a little exclamation from upstairs, but it's under a different product name almost everywhere you go, and so we were. Like Robin and I were actually trying to figure out where can he get this, either in Switzerland or if it's a short drive, short drive. I mean, the being where you're located, you're not that. How far of a drive is it to say to the French border or to the German border?
It's just an hour by car from right here where I live. By the way, it's not Luzern anymore. I moved to another apartment. I'm in a different canton. It's now Zug, which means actually train.
Oh, okay.
So that's but I'm just an hour away from the border. And just as you say, John, it was actually a story by itself until I got that bottle of Future.
Yeah.
Because I have a total of 6 of these big bottles of different. Polish stuff I bought in Spain, and none of those were the ones I was looking for. I have a total of 6 liters of cleaning stuff. I'm never gonna use that much ever. So yeah, that was a story by itself. But now I have Future, and it's perfect. It works very, very good. Okay. I absolutely love it.
Good to hear. And sorry for sending you on a wild goose chase. By the way. As someone who does not speak German, how do we pronounce Abteilung?
Abteilung.
Abteilung. Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Because I just want to make sure that I get that right, because I know I've gotten it wrong. Abteilung.
It was all fine so far.
I'm
a close follower, and then you said it just right. What I'm not sure anyway is I heard Vallejo.
Yeah.
Vallejo and Vallejo.
Yeah.
With this special stuff Spanish-speaking people use. So I'm still not sure which one is correct. I think we have to ask someone who speaks Spain which would be.
we do. As a matter of fact, now this probably is the custodian at the church that I work at is originally from Chile. And so of course fluent Spanish, but of course his accent is Chilean Spanish. But I can still kind of accent. Well, how would you pronounce it? And then perhaps some people who are more fluent in Spanish might be able to correct us. Now, the one guy that I've picked up a lot of weathering techniques from, who's he's not model railroading at all. If you go to my channel, just my basic channel page, and you'll notice down the left-hand column, the right-hand column, you'll see channels that I recommend, and somewhere in there, I'm pretty sure it's still there, is called Dr. Cranky's Laboratory, and he does car models. Specifically, he does what are called rat rods, which are basically older style cars that are just like rusted all out with souped up engines in them and all kinds of things. And that's kind of his specialty. And he's done a number of videos. He's published some books. His current output of videos right now isn't all that regular, but I picked up my pronunciation of Vallejo from him because he has used Vallejo paints in the past. But given that his actual real name is Virgil Suarez, he speaks Spanish, and although
all right, that makes sense.
Cuban Spanish, and he is known as Dr. Cranky. So if you want like a genuine weathering god, check him out. And
I sure will do that.
But like I said, his scale, of course, is more the 1/25 scales. He does cars. Like me, he does a little bit of Warhammer 40,000 stuff as well. Did I mention my son has only one volume?
You did, but it's all fine.
Yeah, like to the point where I actually have a decibel meter on my phone. to measure how loud he can get. And there was one point I measured him at 100 decibels. And
Oh, that's nice.
He's louder than a buzzsaw. I mean, so that is just kind of the fun. So
We have train horns rated at 100 decibels.
Yeah. Okay. So Otto. So just Pledge Revive It is the brand name here in Canada as well. That's what they're calling it now. What they're calling future now, and I think that's sort of universal across the U.S. and in Canada. In the U.K., it was Johnson's Clear, and a few others. So yeah. So Matt, he's not that loud over YouTube yet, but he also happens to be a good 25 feet away if you count bounce factor in there, and he's still potentially drowning me out. So. Sometimes he sounds like he's like right here, but anyway. So the realizing we are coming up to the hour, and I just want to go through. We've been talking a lot. And I've been just trying to make sure that we're answering any questions with that. And what I'm kind of hoping to do is that to feature somebody new every week in terms of what are you working on, and and hoping to kind of at least keep accountable, because I've got these to finish off for Florent. The trouble is it's Holy Week. Even though I'm not in the church, it's going to be a very busy week for me.
Of course.
And just Bill, I haven't started on it yet, but it's right here. But I have actually there were some assembly instructions that Bill sent me in terms of working on that, and I'm still waiting on the decals to arrive. So once the decals arrive, that's really where that process will get started. So I guess yes, so. For those of you modeling with skills, now here's something a little interesting. Since a lot of the social distancing has taken place, this channel, I need to check with some of the other guys, whether it's Mike Pfeiffer, it's certainly Ron Marsh, and others, that the traffic on this channel has really gone up. And I noticed an article. I think it was on CNN, is that social isolation is getting people to reconsider some old hobbies, and the picture featured is model railroad.
That makes sense.
So that's kind of something that's sort of cropped up. For those of you who've been following my From Loop to Layout series, which at the moment have actually been my most watched stuff, and it has nothing to do with has a little bit to do with the weathering, because I've got all my stuff on there on pink styrofoam. Wondering when is the next installment of that coming out, and I'll give you a bit of background. I actually have a script written, and I was trying to film it, and I realized I bit off more than I can chew, so I've got to chop that script down. And actually do the filming for that, because what I'm doing is something on operations, but specifically in the relationship of a small layout can lend itself to actually having a more puzzle type look to it. So and so there's pros and cons to each of those. There's some that say you should not have puzzle arrangements on your layout at all, and others say it's perfectly fine. I'm sort of landing in the middle of saying the question is, what can you do with it? And so looking at operations and puzzles is what I'm working on. Initially, I was going to feature 3 different puzzles on it. I'm going to bring that down to 1 and then break it up into a few parts. So I've actually got an Inglenook siding set up on the layout as an industrial siding, and I'm going to show how it's going to be used for both operation and if you want to isolate it just for honestly messing around. So that's next. I just have to film it, and I've got Easter in the way, and so that's part of one of my projects beyond the weathering stuff of trying to do that. So that's kind of just, if there's a channel update, trying to do that, and actually everything is now set up downstairs, and I actually had my son actually bring everything into that Inglenook siding. So in fact, he might be my operator while I'm filming the video. a 5-year-old running an
That's a lot of fun for sure.
Yeah, now he'll go by my instructions. I'll be telling him what to do, and he's actually reasonably good at that. I think when he first got started, he accidentally ran the back end of a train off the end because I didn't have a bumper at that point. But I think we can probably do this part, and we'll kind of figure it out and get that to you. But wanting to be able to share that next part of adding a little bit more interest to the layout. So and then we can go from there. So I guess now the quick way I realize that there's going to be a few. Oh right. Of course, Robin, you have a YouTube channel, but you don't have a YouTube channel.
Yeah, exactly. So, long story short, I have a YouTube channel, obviously, because I have some playlists which I watch, and one of them is, of course, the weathering playlist with all my favorite videos. But I never plan to upload any stuff by myself. So, first of all, in Europe, it's not that common to weather stuff as it is in North America. Yes, we have a lot of people who do weathering, but it's not that common as it is over there.
Okay.
That's one. Second, we have so many different languages here. I don't know, should I do a channel in German? Should I do it in English? Because obviously my English is far from perfect because I only learned it from movies and at school. Or should I do it in Hungarian? Which one would have the most followers? So maybe I will do some stuff in future, but I'm more of the guy who does some pictures and upload it to a group, and whoever has a question, I can type the answer down there. So
and the thing is, Robin, how many languages do you actually speak?
So that's Hungarian, German, and if we want to make a difference there, Swiss German, but that's not really a difference. And a little bit of English and like 5 words in French, which I still can remember from school, but that's all.
Yeah. Well, my French may be marginally better than yours, but you know, my wife and daughter and son are actually fairly fluent, and I respect the mine is more the high school French. I suppose if I was dropped into it, it'd be fine. But as far as this goes, your English has been fine. I've certainly been able to understand you without any great difficulty. And you know, someone actually mentioned Matt Armstrong mentioned that you can also you can use Instagram as well. Now that
Thanks, Dave.
I mean that having been said, the one thing is if you subscribe to Robin, basically what you'll get is in terms of he has his playlists of stuff that he likes and puts together, and I got a little update from Bill that the decals for the decals for this are going to be arriving hopefully Tuesday. So that's at least the schedule, and for the most part, the postal services have been working just fine. So that means I can actually get to work on doing the assembly part of Bill's model, but also the disassembly to make sure that I'm doing that. Bill, I haven't looked. Does this locomotive has an interior? Am I correct? Because it's the Rapido is really good about that. Because if it has an interior, guess what's getting painted? So that's gonna be part of the job on this particular one. So, are there any other questions out there for either Robin or myself? I want to. Just while you're posting those, I want to encourage everybody, you know, get into your stash, work with what you have, and if you have any questions, saying, you know, like all I've got is stone knives and bear skins. How do I weather this thing? Post the questions over on the forum in terms of getting some input, and it won't just be myself. You'll also have Robin. You'll have everybody's kind of collective experience. I mean, Ralph Renzetti checks it out too, and So we can kind of bring that all together in terms of the shared experience, and the big thing is keeping each other sane while it is we are in the various stages of social distancing as dependent on how COVID-19 is kind of playing out where it is, and so you know I'm hoping that everybody is keeping safe. So. if there, I'm gonna give it about 30 seconds or so, and so you get your questions in, and but if nobody has anything, then we'll probably just get ready to wrap this up. Because I do have a little more than a little bit of housework to do today, and as well as making a few phone calls and the like. So,
if it is okay with you, John, I still would like to mention 2-3 small things before we wrap it up.
Absolutely, we got.
So one of it is proper credit goes to Gary Christensen from the Rust Bucket forum. I will make a picture of these 2 paints and post it in the Facebook group.
Okay.
In your Facebook group. Actually, it's transparent orange. It's transparent orange iron oxide. Mm-hmm. And the other paint is titanium white.
Okay.
I just posted it in the chat. Both of these paints are by M. Graham Company. It's an Oregon-based company. Mm-hmm. A mixture of these 2 paints gives a very nice dusty effect.
Oh,
if you add a little bit more orange, it's like orange juice when you mix it together.
Okay.
But it's really dusty gray when you apply it on the model. It's absolutely weird. Gary Christensen made a very nice tutorial of this. And the transparent orange iron oxide is a beautiful rust color by itself. So again, it's one product for 2 different things, which is great. You could also do washes. It's oil. It's absolutely oil-based.
Okay. So with it being an oil paint, I mean, I'm kind of curious if it's specifically that brand, or if there are similar colors in say Winsor Newton or something like that to try it out. But either way, transparent orange iron oxide. I'm going to have to definitely check that out. Okay, so that's number 1. You got number 2?
Yes, and number 2. You just before we started, you mentioned because of the dance I did into the gondola.
Oh yes.
I thought I'm going to share this one. So obviously in the camera you won't see it, but I have a lot of dance and hinges in this gondola. So what I used here is, instead of a regular lighter, I use this, which has pressure. You can see blue light. So what this does, it uses a lot of pressure. It's like a torch more than a regular lighter. And that allows me to, inside the gondola, to heat up a specific section, like more down in the center of the car, which would be pretty difficult with if you use a regular lighter.
Right.
So I use this torch kind of lighter with the pressure gas.
So what sort of distance do you have to keep in order to make sure that suddenly the model doesn't go up in flames?
It really depends on the car you are doing, because the Athearn cars have a smaller material thickness than does this Atlas. This one is done by Atlas. It's a Masterline car, but it's a tiny amount thicker than an Atlas, than an Athearn car would be, or one of these finer manufacturer companies like Exactrail. I really like Exactrail. On one of the cars I did before, I heated up for 1 or 2 seconds more than I should have had. Mm-hmm. And when I went away with the lighter for another 2 seconds, it just started to melting down.
Okay.
I still could use it as a car. It turned out fine, but be very careful. So what I would suggest, whatever you use as soldering iron or a lighter or a torch, whatever you use, it doesn't depend. Try it with just 1 second and go away and check out how the plastic already melted, and try it with 2 seconds, then with 3, and then with 4, and so on. Okay. It's easier to do 4 steps than 1 and burn the whole car down. So
yeah, and you don't want to necessarily light your hobby desk on fire.
Exactly. Yeah.
So as Matt pointed out, I think the terminology here is a butane torch.
Exactly.
I know that I've seen some lighter types like that. So that's number 2.
Yes, and number 3, I think most of you guys already know this product. This is by Smokebox Graphics. I just want to mention, because I absolutely do love this stuff. This is the yellow safety stripes.
Oh, okay.
You can have different, they have like 3 or 4 different yellow tones, more of a darker brownish and more of a lighter yellow. And for the Canadian and the Norfolk Southern units, you also have gray.
Oh, okay.
And but this does, I can't caption it in the camera, but it actually reflects.
Oh,
So for the people
it,
who do, yes, when you turn on light
okay,
in a specific angle, you can see that the whole unit reflects on these stripes, and that's
okay,
what the actual yellow safety stripes do, as they are they are mandatory by 2003 and plus. So I think, or 2005, that's when they had to add these yellow safety stripes.
mm,
And just wanted to mention the company. I don't get any credit for this. I just absolutely love this stuff,
okay.
so that's why I share it.
Can you put the link for that over in the forum?
I will
And
do. I will do both in the Facebook group and here in the chat. I will add. It's by Smokebox Graphics.
okay,
They have different. They also have decals for graffitis. I think, not sure, or
okay,
for just regular decaling like number boards and
okay.
such. And this is one of their products. And it's the good thing about this. It's already. It's you can see it. It comes in the pre-made sizes,
Right.
like
So,
the higher
mhm,
stripes, the smaller stripes,
okay.
and it's self-adhesive. That's why I love
Okay,
about it.
so it's a peel and stick, so it's not a water slide.
Exactly.
Like for example, I do have safety striping from Highball Graphics,
Hmm.
that does it in little short strips. And I mean, I used it on Austin's the gondola with all the graffiti on it. I did use it on there, but it's not reflective. Now, granted, N scale is sort of a different kettle of fish when it comes to that. But certainly, if you're an HO, you just pay attention to this. Um,
Absolutely, it's so cool, especially when you have night operations, which I don't have so far. But what I did, I turned off the lights in the room and
mhm.
just with the flashlight, I pointed on the locomotives, and
Okay.
you can't see anything in the room, but you can see the safety stripes. And for guys who might gonna do some night operations, it's absolutely fantastic. And I just noticed Matt Armstrong asked me, do you clear over yours? There is no reason to do it, but you don't harm it. So, like on this Union Pacific Givo I already shown earlier, it has the reflective striping. And once I'm done with all the oil paints, I'm gonna do and add another matte coat layer of the on the whole unit.
Mm,
And I think I'm gonna just clean off the yellow safety stripes so
okay.
that they reflect again. But you don't have to spray anything on it. You just can't put it on the model, but you can dull coat over it. But I think you should have to clean it off after that.
Fabulous. Okay, so the thank you very much for sharing that. I see
Yeah,
that.
sure.
All right, so with I'm just doing a quick scan for any other questions, and to the watching audience, Robin just happened to be my first guest. And if you're interested in actually coming online and talking, given that next Sunday is Easter Sunday, even though I'm probably going to be at home, I'm not sure if I'm going to be doing a live stream, or if I do, I'm going to have to shift it around a little bit. But the idea is this seems to be a good time for people both in North America and in Europe. And if you want to share some of the stuff that you're working on, I'm more than happy to talk, and we just kind of arrange and set this up. As long as you've got Skype, we can actually set it up so that you can actually, there we are, so you can actually talk to. You can talk to me this way, and part of it's just kind of talking over what's in your kit. What are the favorite techniques that you're using? What are some of the things that you've learned? Um, and if there's any kind of questions of saying, "Hey, I'm working on this," what advice would you give? And so that's part of the idea behind this. And as a promise to all of you viewers out there, I am going to be working trying to get that. I actually I've three different videos in production. I've got the next loop to layout. I've got Will Kling, who, if you're out there, Will, I might actually have you as a guest on there. His switcher, I got all the footage for it ready to go, and I've got Rick Stone King's the steam locomotive. Those I have all the footage for, and I have to assemble those into weathering videos as well. So that's going to be that. It's like lots of material, but of course, when I'm trying to balance doing a lot of video work from home, I have another YouTube channel that's based on my day job, that is getting a lot of overtime work right now, providing resources and things like that online in the middle of this. So as we're kind of doing this and editing everything else together. Oh yes, don't forget to like. and you can always come back and kind of consult this. Also, you can go back to last week's with Ralph Ranzetti, hopefully building up a library with all this. And Robin, thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity. It was great fun and big honor to be here at the show. Thank you very much. It was great fun. I hope my English was good enough for all the people who were listening to this.
It was just fine. It was just fine, and I think that was I think we're good. So with that,
I have seen one last question by Will Kling.
Oh.
What colors do you use for couplers? If you ask me, again, I just do some light dry brush with this cheap Americana paint, burnt umber, rust color, whatever you want. Or the second version, I spray paint Rust by Vallejo. The ready to use for the airbrush. I just from different angles, very light, and then I come back with powders. That's all. So a little bit of paint, a little bit of powder. That's all.
And Will, I also try and keep the couplers fairly light, but sometimes I find in some respects the oils are a little bit more forgiving with that. But at the same time, for rust, my favorite rust color is of course Mornfang Brown from Games Workshop, right here, and just doing a very light. Just a very light brush gives it kind of a rusty tone. You just need to avoid the springs, especially for Will, because you work in N scale like I do. You don't want too much paint on there. You don't want to get the coupler to gum up. So I mean, the other thing is once you paint it, after a little while, you need to come back and kind of flick it around a little bit to make sure that it works. So good. Anyway, with all of that, good luck in all of your modeling, and keep sane. If you have any questions, by all means, just post it to the Facebook group. And just through all of this, thank you so much for checking in and checking us out.
Thank you very much, guys. Thank you very much for being part of the chat and all the questions. It was great fun. Thank you.
Will do. Anyway, to everyone, with my son yelling in the background, I am going to wish everybody good luck, and may you keep on track.